Good evening, everyone. Welcome along to tonight's Inspire Learning Parent Information event for Eildon East parents. You've got the double Graham team today. I'm Roddy Graham, lead teacher of Inspire Learning, and with me is Paul Graham. Paul, how are you tonight?
I'm great, thank you. I'm Paul Graham, the Inspire Development Officer tonight. I'm going to give you a little bit of a run through of exactly why Inspire Learning is such a valuable part of our learning and teaching experience for our young people, and why we've invested in our young people's education through delivering the iPad to support their learning and teaching. So I'm going to do a little bit of a slideshow. I think Roddy's going to give you a little bit of an input on a couple of our absolute key apps in Shobi and Caligo. But we're also going to give you guys some updates on some tips that you could use to support your young person at home, but also give you an idea of what a young person's experience might be in the classroom. I'm going to be jumping in and out of a few apps today. So I'm going to be grabbing a couple of iPads and so on. So please bear with me while I try and get on top of everything. But I think we can just get started. Are you all right with that, Roddy?
All good, yeah. If anyone has got any questions as well, feel free to use the live chat on the YouTube live stream, and we'll see if we can answer them for you. I know that I put a wee one up earlier to say please use the live, but I forgot to put the word chat in, so I'm telling you that face to face just now. So if you've got any questions, put them in the live chat, and we'll try our best to answer them for you. So Paul's going to share his screen and show you some slides just now.
Okay, guys. So I'm just going to make sure I get this all set up. And that should be me. Is everything all right on that, Roddy? Can you see it?
Looking good, yeah.
Fantastic. So welcome to Inspire Learning, and we're going to have a little discussion about what it is, what it looks like for your young person. Normally we do this face to face, but tonight I think it's we've decided that this is the best option for us, and we can work away with this. So I'm just going to give you a few pictures just to sort of set a scene here. And the first one we're going to look at here is the Pope's inauguration in 2005. And there's something I want you just have a look at that scene and take it in and see what you were looking at. And just shortly after Pope Ratzinger was inaugurated, we had our current Pope inaugurated in 2013. And there's quite a stark difference there. I think you can all notice it. What do you notice, Roddy? What do you spot? Oh, is he muted?
I can see a lot more cameras in that second one than the first one.
A lot more cameras. And I kind of want to keep that in mind when we go into this next slide here. This is George Bush in 2000. There's just everybody saying hello to him. You might see a couple of sort of standard cameras that are, they're not digital cameras. They're actually just normal cameras in the background. When we move on to Obama, just a little bit later, we have digital cameras, and we're starting to see some phones being held up by some of the people in the audience. But they're all taking photos of Obama. And now, the difference in 2016 for Hillary Clinton, selfies. Everybody's taking a selfie with the president. But what you notice again when we move into 2022 is that our president, the current president, is actually using his own opportunity to take a selfie. So he's identifying that this is a way of promoting himself. So we're noticing a big approach change to that. But the biggest approach has just sort of happened at the end of 2022 into 2023. Now, this is a fake image of Donald Trump. It was identified by BBC News as fake. It's AI generated. So already from 23 years, we've seen people from not having any real digital tools in their pocket to people being able to make completely fake images, just even from their own phone, from their own devices, from their own iPads. So when we talk about the change in technology that we're seeing it quite drastically, and it's happened quite quickly in our lifetime in the last 20 odd years. So to think about what's the change going to be in the next 20 years? So what's the change going to be for our young people as they go into the office? We no longer call this the digital office. We will just call this the office. We expect to be using laptops and computers in offices. We don't expect to see typewriters. We don't expect to see people sending mail anymore. We're moving into a very digital world when we work in that office space. But that's the case in shops as well. People are now putting orders in online. If you went to McDonald's, you don't actually have to go and speak to a customer. You don't have to even be on the site. You can literally order that through your phone. And that's all going through to the people who work in those spaces. And they have to be digitally literate to work with this machinery and the technology in those spaces. Digital hospital. There's no way you would call it a digital hospital. You would just call it hospital. And everything we're working within these hospitals nowadays, you wouldn't want to be working in a hospital that didn't use these digital machines to support it. So even Medicare or biomedical sciences are now really advancing throughout the technology, through the technology that we're using. And that's making a massive difference on it. There's recently an information on how technologies being AI is being used to diagnose people with Alzheimer's faster than ever before, just by looking at brain scans. And we're not talking about classrooms anymore. We're not talking about digital classrooms. In the Scottish Borders Council, we talk about our classroom. And this is the key thing here, and I really want to really highlight this. We want to improve the young person's learning and experience in their classroom. We want them to have the very best experience. And that means that if a digital tool is needed to be used, they need to have access to it. If it's paper-based, like this young girl's using, she's using pen and paper, but she's being supported by her digital tools in front of her. So the teacher can set the task appropriately. Is it going to be on the iPad, or is it better being on pen and paper, or is it better being a hands-on activity? And that's the key thing here. Everything we do is about having the best experience for the young person. It's not about replacing pen and paper. It's not about replacing good, solid practice that was being done before. It's about improving on it and finding ways to impact it. And the reason why we're going down the route of digital technology and letting our young people experience this and have this in their classroom experience is because of the opportunities that are available to them right now. These are the top jobs that are out there. There's science and technology jobs. But the thing I want you to notice underneath is culture, media, and sports. We want our young people to be able to be creative and have opportunities to develop their media experience, or have an understanding of how their approach can be affected or supported by the digital technology. Because everything you're working in customer service, you're going to be using digital technology. If you're working in media, so many of our young people want to have that experience where they're in media and they're working and communicating with their peer group. But you have to have a digital understanding to be able to do that nowadays. You've got your YouTube platforms, you've got your online internet website platforms, you've got apps to communicate with your base of audience. But all these top areas, they all going to have a digital aspect to it. I'm going to talk to you a bit about what the classroom and the iPad is. When we developed the Inspire Learning program, we really wanted to hang it on 4 key pillars. And these 4 key pillars are personal, mobile, collaborative, and excellence. We want our young people to be able to make sure that the learning is personal to them, that they're able to access it in a way that suits them, and they're able to respond to and explain their learning in a way that matters and is impactful to their own learning experience. We want them to be able to experience that learning wherever they are. We don't want them to be tied down to a classroom. We want them to be able to take that digital tool, if it's needed, and take it outdoors. So these students at Selkirk High School are using it in their horticultural lesson here, and they're actually using that to categorize their plants and actually look at the key elements when they bring it back into the classroom. We don't want our young people to be working individually. We know nowadays that the most impactful work, and actually one of the most impactful ways to learn, is through jigsaw activities, which are collaborative. It's where you're working together to achieve one final task. And as you can see here, it's not about doing everything online. Sometimes it's actually recording each other and analyzing each other's work in this PE class so they can talk about it and how they can improve. And we want everything that our young people experience to be excellent. We want them to have the very best learning environment. And that's why we've invested in each and every one of them with an iPad to support that learning experience. We don't want any young person to be in a situation where they don't have a tool or resource that somebody else has at home or in the classroom. And on top of that, let's have a look at one of the really amazing tools that we have. Accessibility is one of the most important tools that we have in the classroom. Some of our young people find it easier to access their learning using accessibility tools. And I'm going to show you a couple of these just now. One of the things that we find when you open up a website is there's a lot of information here. And one of the things we try to do in education is try to reduce the cognitive load. So that's the amount of things that are distracting young people. And when you go on websites today, there's a lot of distractions. But in Safari, the web browser all young people have, they can go up to the A at the top left here, and they can go into Reader View. So I'm just going to select Reader View. Hopefully you can see that's highlighted. So I tap the AA, and I'm going to tap on Show Reader. And what that does is it removes all those adverts on the right. But you also might notice that I might prefer to read my text with a yellow underlay. So if I've got dyslexia or have a reading something that supports me, I feel that I read better on a different color paper, I can do that. And I can choose different backgrounds. So if I choose black, we know that white on black is easier to read for young people. And I can actually do this, or actually for anybody. It's normally easier to access for visually impaired pupils as well. So I can now see I've removed the distractions of all the adverts and other links on the side, and I've just got the text. But what happens if I'm struggling to read a new word? I can actually get help with that. So I can highlight the text. I can either highlight a whole sentence. I'm going to highlight here. She said, enabling. And I can get my iPad to speak to me. Now, hopefully you can pick this up on my speaker. Oh, let's see. It's not being very loud. I'll try again. So one more time. It's still being very quiet. So what that's done is it's actually speaking that to me. So you can actually see when I click on speak, each word that is speaking is highlighted as it goes. So that would actually allow the young person, if they've experienced a new word and they've never heard it before or seen it before, it will help them sound it out. So they have the phonetics tools, but this will actually add to that. There's another amazing tool that we have, and it's dictation. Sometimes if I'm struggling with the word, it's easier for me to just speak it. So enabling, and it will speak that out to me. I said speed the first time, so it will keep reading and it will keep typing what I'm saying just as I say it, even with an accent. So a young person, if they're struggling to type a word, or actually sometimes it's hard for us to think about the story we're trying to explain and type at the same time, or even write, the iPad will help me express what I'm trying to explain or express my understanding, my learning, and actually won't have me worrying about how I'm typing that out or how I'm writing that out, and it will support me in that. So these are just some of the accessibility tools we have. And I can tell you right now, I used to teach a pupil who, without that tool, would not have achieved what he's achieved. He started school with a reading age of 6, and he's left schools with advanced hires, and it's all because of the iPad that's allowed him to do that. But as a teacher, what are some of the tools that are advantageous for me? Well, assessment's a key thing. We want to know where our young people are at. We want to know if our young people have understood what we've taught and if we're ready to go on, or if I need to help one of them with it. And we use a lot of digital quizzes and online resources to do this. And the advantage of that is, as a class, I can ask a whole load of questions and get a clear piece of feedback. Now, what I'd expect for a class quiz is that I want to have more than 70% accuracy, or 70% accuracy, and I'm happy to move on. So as you can see here, I can see that my class got 70% accuracy. But what happens is I've set that quiz, I've allocated it to them. The young people have either done that at home or as they've joined the class, and I get feedback of exactly what questions they were able to do and exactly what questions they've struggled with. And as you can see here, the first 8 questions went really well. And that's what I'd really planned. And then they got a little bit more tricky as they went on. And what I could see quite quickly is I can get an overview of which students have struggled with which questions. And I can see which questions haven't been done. And I can see quite quickly that question 12 was really tricky. So let's have a look at that. So now I can go to question 12. And I can find out a little bit about this. So in here, I can see that 8 students got it wrong, 15 got it correct, and I can explain what the mistake is. So what I notice here is that they've multiplied out the bracket, but they haven't remembered to multiply the 3 by -5, and they've got a positive 15 instead. So I've identified quite quickly where the mistake is made. I can correct that with the individuals, or I can correct that with a class. So that's some of the tools that I can use within the quizzes side of things. In creativity, our young people are asked often to consolidate and confirm their learning. So what we want to do sometimes is we want to have a creative project, and I'm hoping I'm going to have a little bit of a bright light here when you join me on this. What we can use is creative tools like this tool called Clips. Now you're getting a little view of me, but I can actually set up my learning. So I'm going to go into this, and I can have a little title section, and I could put my inspire journey. And what I could do here, and what I did when I was a class teacher, is I used this kind of approach to dictate and give my pupils the ability to consolidate the learning. So at the moment, I'm recording a little segment. That means that adds into the task. I can then add some photos of previous learning, and I'm going to pick out this one and just add that quickly. And it could be my journey, and it'll take me through the key things here. But I can also add effects to my item here. So I'm going to quickly add smiley faces, or I can add a little bit of a descriptor. And instead of me sharing a little library book or anything like that, I can actually record my colleagues or my classmates acting on something, or I can record my own voice and actually put it together in a short video that when I press play, it will appear and it will give you all the information. I can add music and I can add different media types in the space that you're working in, which is just a little bit more relevant to our young people. And we know that when you make something relevant to someone when they're learning, that they're more likely to engage with it. So the tools that we're using are more relevant for a young person's experience, what they're experiencing day to day, and allows them to apply that skill set in a way that makes sense to them. The other thing is, within the classroom setting, we want things to be as simple as possible. And what we're able to do with tools like Apple Classroom is we're actually able to do a little bit of classroom management as well. So what I have here is I have the ability to see my class students, and I'm just going to turn on my iPads just now. I'm able to see what my class students are up to, and I can see what websites or what apps they're accessing. So you can see that Jed is just accessed Safari, or actually they've just opened up Shobi there, and I can see what every one of my young persons is doing. I can also see that Captain Marvel hasn't actually opened up their iPad yet. And all that's possible from there. But I can also lock their screens. Oh, excuse me. I can also lock their screens. And in here, that means that all the young people have had their iPads locked. And it means that they can't access it without my permission. I just had to give permission to every single one of them. And then that works out for me. So Captain Marvel's still struggling. So every screen is locked. I keep tapping my screen instead. So now they can't access it. But I can also make sure that they open up works in group, in a particular group. So I can unlock their screens again. Keep doing the same mistake. I can unlock their screens, but I can also set them up to open up a particular app as well. So I could choose a student, and I can say, I would like you to open up a particular app. So I can say, navigate to Safari, and I could choose Scottish Ski Touring, and that takes them straight to that location. The other advantage of this is obviously a little bit of classroom management, but you can also distribute work through it. So if I'm going to do a quick task of this, I'll open up my files. If I have a task, what I might want to do is set a different task to each young person. So I have two groups here. I might want to set group 2 this task, and it will set them. And I'm just going to do that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is the problem with having so many devices in front of me. Slightly tricky. And that means that group has one task, and I could do the same for the other group. I can set them the sustainability one. So this time they have a completely different task. So young people don't even know the difference of activities. So that's just some of the tools that we can use on the iPad. I'm going to go through this a little bit. And I'm going to talk to you about how we're supporting you at home. There's a couple of things you can do if your young person is, you wanted to manage the device. What we're looking to add at the moment is we're in the process of adding something called Jamf Parent. And that will mean that if you download the app for Jamf Parent, you will be able to restrict the young person's access at home, internet access at particular times of your choosing. But you will also be able to do what I did with Apple Classroom, and you'll be able to oversee and see what the actual young person is doing any room of your house. That's Jamf Parent. But there's other tools that we have, and that's something we're in the process of adding at the moment. But there's other tools that we have as well. We have the ability as parents right now to go into our settings of our young person's iPad, and we can go to screen time. And in screen time, we can set it up, and it's already set up on my iPad, so it might ask you to set it up. But I can set a downtime limit, and I can schedule that every day between the time of, let's say, 7 o'clock and 7 o'clock in the morning. So our young person can't access that iPad without accessing. So that turns off all the iPads. So in this case, I'm going to make sure the downtime is on at an hour. That means that my iPad gets locked up. The key thing to realize is that my iPad is not a pupil iPad. So therefore, I have a little bit more. Let's cancel that. Skip. What that means is that I have a little bit more access than a lot of young people. And what that means is now when I open it up, as you can see, all my apps are inaccessible except for my clock. What you will notice when I click on something here is it will say I can ignore limit, but that's because I'm the adult and I've set this up. If you set it up as a parent, it won't allow you to do that. And the young person will only be locked out of the apps that you want to choose. So that means you can restrict the apps accessed. You can also see, I've got a little bit more on this iPad than you will, because young people have a little bit more restrictions, but you can set app limits for particular apps. You don't have to allow them complete access to everything. So if there's a social app, you can link it in. So it shows me all my social apps. I can lock them down. If there's a games app, which we don't have on these devices, you can access it. And this is the key thing to say to you. This is a learning tool. This is not a tool that we want young people to be playing games on specifically. We don't want them to be using to have access to social media. So if there's a social media tool or an access to a game that you think isn't appropriate, please get in touch with your school, and we will make sure that we restrict that access to that device. Now, I'm going to pass you over to Roddy, who's going to take you through a little bit of the tools and apps that we're using at the moment.
Great, thank you, Paul. What we're going to move on to is talk about an app that is there to support literacy, particularly handwriting, but also works for spelling and grammar too, and that is called Caligo. And Caligo is an app that we've invested in for primary pupils across the borders just now. There is going to be some scope for secondary pupils and early years in time as well. But we can see there the difference that Caligo can make in a short space of time between a pupil's handwriting formation. So the one on the left there was taken in October 2021, and as you can see on your screen, there is letters that are not the right size. There's maybe some issues with spacing as well. You can see that the letters aren't particularly formed in the way that we would want it to be. Then by February of 2022, you can see a marked difference with them. There are clear joins. The writing is a lot neater, a lot more eligible to read, and also the kind of layout of the piece overall is a lot better. The next example here shows again that similar kind of aspect with the writing in November of 2022 and then followed up with February 2023. We can see again handwriting that isn't in the right way that we'd be teaching it. You can see writing that is quite hard to read in points as well, compared to the February one, which is only a matter of weeks later, where we can see really neat joined up writing, letters in the right sizes, the right formation, and it's also very clear to read. The major difference there is the length of writing. The amount of writing that a pupil has managed to do in that short space of time has increased. And the way that that was done in these schools was by using the app called Caligo. So Caligo is a teacher-led app whereby all of the spellings, all of the handwritten patterns are put on by the teachers. Similarly, all of the letter formation choices are decided by the school, so that there's a commonality across the whole school that all the letters are formed in the same way. What I'm now going to do is I'm going to share my screen here and show you our little parent's guide to Caligo that we have made. I'm going to start with the bit that says, what is Caligo not? Because I know that there's maybe some misconceptions around where these apps are used, when iPads are used, and the fact that maybe some parents think that all the work is therefore done on an iPad. Caligo means that pupils will not just be doing all their work on an iPad, they will be doing handwritten work as well. It won't be replacing traditional handwriting lessons either. It will supplement and enhance them, and it won't be used all day, every day. It'll only be used when a teacher feels the need to do so. In the data that we've looked at so far with the schools that have used Caligo, we're seeing that pupils are using Caligo for between 5 and 10 minutes a day. It's not a lengthy bit of work that they're doing on it. What it does, though, is it provides opportunities for pupils to do handwriting, spelling, and grammar learning via their iPad. They get instant feedback, which can be used to improve their formation, their legibility, their spellings, and their knowledge of grammar. And it's also teacher-led. So the teacher chooses the activities, they choose the letters and the words that are used, and they share that to either whole classes, groups, or individuals as well. The QR code that's there on the screen just now takes you to a YouTube video, and I'll post this in the live chat later on for you as well, so you can watch that too, which explains a little bit more about what Caligo does. What we did was we had a trial period with it in a number of schools across the borders, and following the success of that, it's been launched in every primary school in the borders. It's an application designed to teach students how to write and spell correctly, and it uses a tablet and stylus in the classroom. It aims to support children of all abilities to achieve their highest possible literacy levels. And there's also neuroscience research that confirms the link between the motor skills and the brain's ability to acquire information. So as Paul was saying earlier on, the cognitive overload, if they're spending all of their brain capacity thinking, how do I form a letter S? How do I write the letter A? Because they've used Caligo and they're aware of how to write these, it means that they can write more lengthy pieces as a result. Why Caligo? As I said, the successful trial in the 7 border schools meant that the councils decided to purchase licenses for all borders primary schools. The technology is very pupil-friendly and it's interactive as well. They get instant feedback on it based on their legibility, their formation of the letters as well, and it makes that huge difference off-screen as well. Often schools in the trial were having pupils writing with stylus and tablet at the same time as writing on paper and pencil. But as you saw in the examples that I shared at the very start, the difference really comes off-screen when they're doing it in their jotters or on lined paper. Now, what we're going to do next is I'm going to hand back over to Paul with the screen share, because I'm going to ask you, Paul, to show us the app in action, if possible.
Absolutely. And I'm going to answer maybe a couple of questions in the chat, because there's some really good points that were made around this. We really want you to be reassured that this is not a replacement for paper. We absolutely 100% feel that it's important that a young person still has that chance to write on paper. We know that helps recall. We know that helps retrieval. But Roddy is absolutely on point with the formation of letters. It reduces that thought process, that thought that's required to how they form, and lets them think about what they're expressing and what they're writing. And actually, one of the questions was around data. This year, our ASIL data has improved. So that means our Scottish data that we have to submit every year. We've had improvement in our literacy this year and our numeracy in P4, P7, and in S1, and I think S3. We've had everything improved across the board. I think in S3, the only thing that might have slightly dipped was our numeracy data, but that area I'm slightly different. So now I'm just going to pop you into a share screen. I'm just going to show you the app. Hopefully you can see right here. I'm just jumped straight into it. You can set lessons. Your teacher will set a very personalized lesson for each individual child based on their experience or group of children. So it's set in that way. It's all about letter formations. You can see here, this child has been set the letter C, then they're actually practicing it. But there's some really, really cool little tools. I'm just going to jump into this experience here. So I can write capital letters. I can write letters in lowercase. You can write precursive. You can write cursive as well. I'm just going to jump into this. I'm going to try and write the word lion. We'll see how I do. And it gives me feedback that I've been very positive. Now, if I do it the wrong way and do it like this, it's actually able for me here. I've got an orange mark, and as a teacher, I can click on the question. It will show me how I'm supposed to have written it, and it will show me how I haven't written it. Now, that's a really important tool for either the teacher. They then know instantly how the child may be misforming it, and allows that early interventions so that it doesn't become consolidated in the young person's learning experience. So that's just an ability to go back and go through that, and it will speak the word as well. That's just formations of letters, but there's some other really amazing stuff within this. When we're talking about spelling, if I want to spell my words, this one's just per, so let's spell that correctly. It covers the word while I'm writing it, which is look, cover, write. It tells me I've got it correct. And then it's day, so my 3-letter word. What happens if I spell it wrong here? It will actually tell me what I've got wrong, what letter I've got it wrong. And as a teacher, I can see exactly all this information is fed back to me as a teacher. And it will give me another opportunity to rewrite that, to correct my mistake. And that's really important. We know that after feedback, you need to be given the opportunity to correct that feedback. And that's so much more impactful if it's done promptly. Where before, as a teacher, you might have collected in that spelling and you'd had to feed that back the day later to allow them to correct it. They get that instant opportunity to do that feedback. That's just some of the tools that are in it. There are also tools around actually identifying correct answers. So if I'm going to be correcting adjectives, let's see if I think an adjective is film, it will actually tell me that I'm wrong, and it will give me the correct answer as well. It'll give me the opportunity to correct that, and it'll tell me it's funny. So each time it can actually give me that information. So I'm just going to circle, and it's going to give me the correct answer this time. So I might have given me a little bit extra, but it knows that on the whole that I've got that correct. So these are some of the approaches that Caligo gives. It gives you that instant feedback. It helps with your learning, the learning of new spelling, and actually allows you to apply that. But it also reduces that cognitive load that you might have of actually forming those letters. And I should have pressed play before I started showing that. But over to you, Roddy.
Thank you, Paul. So Caligo is being deployed in all of our schools at this minute in time. If it's not in your school yet, it will be. I know that Susie Douglas is on this call tonight. I've seen her in the comments before. She's the brilliant cluster support teacher for Eildon East. So she'll be supporting the schools in the rollout of that in the coming weeks and months. The next one I'm going to speak about is Shobi, which I'm hopeful that most of you are aware of. Shobi is our app for basically it's a digital classroom. It covers a lot of the different. Can you see that on your screen, Paul? The Shobi one.
I can, yeah.
You can, brilliant. So Shobi, it's an app used by teachers and staff. You can assign work with it. You can collect work. You can review people's work as well. We've been using Shobi in primary schools for the last 2 years. There's been a great momentum with Shobi too. Lots of our nurseries are using it as well as a digital learning portfolio, and it kind of shows that learning journey that a pupil takes with them up the way through the school. How it can be used on our iPads, you can put teaching resources on, it can be video, it can be audio, it can be text-based. You can share learning evidence as well. You can provide feedback in a number of ways, be it through written text, be it through voice notes as well, or videos as well. And it can also connect families with their pupils' learning journeys too. So we've noticed a real engagement level and an engagement shift with families when they are using Shobi. Rather than being maybe informed at a parents' evening twice a year about how their learning is going, they're seeing it almost instantaneously as soon as the teacher puts their work onto Shobi. So they're a lot more knowledgeable with their understanding of what's happening in the classroom. When I've been speaking to parents as well about Shobi across the borders, a large number of them are saying to me that when they're collecting their children from school, for example, rather than the conversation being, what were you doing in school today? And the pupil coming back saying, not very much. I've got 2 of my own that say that to me regularly. Because of Shobi, I'm now able to say, I saw that you were doing this at school today. Can you tell me a little bit more about it? So there's a far higher engagement level with that. Why we use it, it provides that great user-friendly experience. It's a really safe and secure platform. And crucially, it's designed by educators for educators. Unlike other platforms, for example, Microsoft Teams, which was a business platform first, and then they had an education part of it in time, Shobi was made specifically for schools by previous teachers and educators. So it works really nicely in our settings. In ELC to P3, as you can see there, we've got a number of borders, nurseries and schools are using it as a digital learning journey. Teachers and staff upload photos, videos and audio of learning, and they then explain the learning experiences and opportunities that they're receiving. With our primary 4s to 7s, because they have their one-to-one device, our digital classes are created to share teaching resources, provide that differentiation of materials to pupils. And what's really crucial about that aspect is the rest of the class don't know that this has been done. They don't have, because of the way that it works, they don't know that the person beside them has been given different differentiated materials because it just appears in a timeline on the same lesson in front of them. Digital feedback as well can come via voice notes, text comments and annotations, and they can put their best pieces of learning into their portfolio, which can also be viewed by families. Some schools and nurseries are also making use of Shobi groups, and this can be for whole class parent communication in the form of a WhatsApp style chat, individual family communication between staff and parents and carers, or to deliver materials for select groups of pupils. So for example, there might be a reading group that has a little group on Shobi, or house captains might have their own little space to chat as well, just to improve their learning experience. The 5 reasons that I've put there as to why we love Shobi: everyone gets their own Shobi account. That's staff, pupils, and parents. They all sign up for it separately. They're not needing to share login details. Our young pupils, especially our youngest ones, can sign in with a QR code. They don't need to remember a username or a password. They can just scan a code and that logs them in. The annotation tools are interactive, they're engaging, they're very easy to use for both pupils and staff. The feedback is streamlined as well for both teachers and pupils, and that portfolio provides that place for best learning evidence in one space throughout a child's life. The other aspects there, I won't share them all with you just now, but it makes learning more personalised, it provides more high quality feedback, and the family engagement levels are increased as well. So hopefully you'll have noticed in your settings the difference that Shobi can make in the pupils' learning experiences. Paul, I think we've got maybe some more things in the chat that we might want to discuss.
There's some really fantastic questions in the chat, and there's also some really sort of useful information that I think I'm going to go back through. And I just want to make sure I'm covering this. Is that, well, let's go for is there a single sign-on for various apps? So on the whole, what we try and do is Roddy's identified is there's a few approaches for logging in. For Caligo, it's a QR code that we use mainly for logging in, but also for Shobi and Glow, there should be one login sign-in for that. That's through their Glow login, which is the Scottish National Education Portal, which is through Microsoft Outlook that they run it through. So everybody should be able to log in through that one. I think there's one I saw much earlier on. Oh, here we go. I'm trying to go through this.
Was it the non-Apple devices one by any chance?
Yeah, there's a good one. That's another one. So are pupils exposed to non-Apple devices? So when you get to secondary school, there's access to laptops. Every computing department has PC. Every business studies department has a PC. What I've actually noticed is when we're talking to a number of young people when they're at university, they're using iPads or tablets. There's a lot of common ones, and actually a number of my colleagues are starting to use tablets as well. So it's starting to become a little bit more common. I do understand around the access to keyboards. What we find is that a lot of our young people are quite happy using keyboards. That's absolutely fine. The other one, actually, I remember now, Roddy, is the question of games and actual what's the policy on that. What I'm going to say to you guys is that in SBC, it's an education device, and that's what we're wanting to use it for. What we leave is each school has a policy on their expectations on how they're using the devices in regards to rewards. So I'm not going to make a comment on that as a general SBC side of things. The key thing I want to say from Scottish Borders Council is that they're an education device, and we want them to be used for learning experiences across the board. So that's the key thing I want to understand about that.
There's one here as well saying that Shobi started off being used differently by different teachers and different directory structures. Is it getting more standardized?
Yes, I mean, what we're at the moment is we're starting to find that each school in each cluster is getting more standardized on how they're approaching it. Last year was what I would say is the first year where every school started to use it across the Scottish borders. So what we're finding is this year is there's becoming a more standardized approach. You'll start to see that across the board. And we're also starting to see this year that our secondary schools are starting to take this on. I think Eildon are just starting that journey. Eildon High School are just starting that journey just now. So what you'll find is as your young person goes through their school experience, they'll start to see a more standardized experience that each school they go to will be much more clear. What you do find is obviously that each teacher will use it slightly different, and that's to be understandable. But each school is starting to set that clear expectation of this is how much work we want to be set on the iPad on Shobi. This is how we want it to be shared. So that is becoming much more standardized across the board as teachers become more familiar and more confident with it.
There's just one more there that we've not looked at so far, and that was trying to access Shobi in the child's iPad. Now, it's not too easy to navigate, and none of the documents are visible. If a document isn't visible, it's possibly a proxy setting issue. If you get in touch with your school about that, they can guide you as to how to do the proxy reset. And the parent version is not easy either, as there's so many folders. What a lot of schools are now using, because they are using Shobi a lot more for providing learning resources, for providing the materials that they need, is that they're putting the learning into the portfolio, and that's the main place that a parent should be kind of viewing the learning journey, because it gives them that one timeline of their best pieces of learning. So it might be a conversation that we can have with the school to support that aspect of it. If anyone else does have any other questions, feel free to pop them into the chat. We are going to be here for the next few minutes. I don't think there's any other slides to share, though. Am I right in saying that, Paul?
There is no more slides to share. I think it's been actually, there was a slide, one of the last slides that I did show you of some of the pupils actually, which was saying having a positive impact, was some of our young people from Eildon High School who actually came along and they started the journey on app development. And it's one of these sort of opportunities that we get our young people to have access to, is they can start to do coding on their own iPad, that they don't have to have a laptop at home. It's really one of these sort of great opportunities that our young people have across the board. But it'd be great to have your feedback on how you felt the session went. Really love to hear if there was anything you liked additional answered, any questions. That'd be amazing to hear as well. But otherwise, I think we'll stay on till 15:15, Roddy. Are you all right with that?
Yeah, it's absolutely
okay?
Fine. Yeah. And if any parents as well weren't able to join us tonight, this video, as soon as the live stream ends, becomes a regular YouTube video. So if you want to share the link with any parents that you know in the Eildon East cluster, feel free to share the link with them, and they can have access to that as well. What I'll do just whilst we're waiting is I'll find that video about the parents' guide to Caligo, and I'll share the link to that in the chat so that you've all got a copy of that as well.
Thank you, Stephen.
Yeah, thank you for that, Stephen. Glad that you found it useful. And thank you, Sarah, as well, for saying that Shobi is great for knowing what's going on at school. Yeah, I'm a parent myself. I've got 2 children at Denham Primary, and they use it fairly regularly there too. So it's great to find out what they're doing on a regular basis, which is great. There's one more that just came in here, Paul, saying that people seem to be able to access movie streaming. Worth having another look at what pupils can access, as teachers won't be able to monitor all the time.
Absolutely. And if you do get any sites that you're able to access, I recently was just having a conversation with a parent about exactly that, and they identified a website, and we're just putting that through to be blocked. So we do keep on top of that as much as possible, and I appreciate that we want to make sure that we restrict the access to only appropriate learning and materials. So it does change. And actually, when your young people get into secondary school, there are slightly different filters as they get a little bit older. But across the board, any concerns about that, and you identified a website you don't want to access, please just send that into your local, your high school or your primary school, and just inform them that that site needs to be restricted or investigated at least.
Thank you, Ingrid, as well, for your kind words. Thank you very much. Very insightful and useful even. And also Naomi for saying thank you for your time. Very interesting. We're glad that you've enjoyed it. It's a bit of a different meeting that we're doing tonight. We're using a platform that we've not used too much over the last wee while, but it's one that we're keen to use a bit more because it works very nicely. So it's been great to have so many of you joining us tonight for that. So thank you very much for your time. I don't see any more questions, Paul, so I think we're going to wrap it up there.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, guys.